Welcome everybody to our evening. Another time for us to gather together and just have an opportunity to check in and support each other and speak about how we are working in this time of coronavirus and taking a look at how we work with legacy, sort of using that as a topic to just launch our session tonight and as a theme that we will track through this conversation. But we're also going to open it up just to talk about other things that may be on your mind. I would like to start off with just letting you know that from INELDA, we have tonight myself, as well as Jenny Racco, the president of INELDA, and Jerry Glatter, the vice president of INELDA, are with us tonight as well. So people are waving at each other, which is lovely. Hello.
Hello.
So we're going to just have an open conversation, just support, share, talk about how we're all doing. And in fact, I think I would like to start with that. But first, I want to let you know that in a little bit, I'm going to invite one of the attendees, Diane Button, who is with us tonight. And I will introduce her when we get to that. But she's with us, and she's going to also offer some information and ideas and experiences around utilizing legacy work from a virtual perspective. And so we will do that shortly. But first, I'd like to just begin with an opportunity for people to just open up and talk a little bit about how you're doing and how you're dealing with this incredible pandemic that we're going through and all of the physical isolation and all of the other, I think, losses that go along with what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to invite people to, if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand. There's a hand raise. If you go down to the participants section, you'll be able to raise your hand, or you can just raise your hand, however you would like to do it. And then I'll offer that you should unmute yourself and share. So perhaps Janie and Jerry would like to just kick us off with anything you'd like to say.
Yeah. So one housekeeping thing I do want to say before we start is that we are recording this. So this is something that we will probably save as a recording. We may put it on YouTube. So if anybody really has a problem with your name being on this, you can change your name, you can hide your name, you can hide your face. But we just wanted at least, this is a great education tool also. So we wanted everyone to know that we will be recording this, and this may be uploaded to YouTube.
And we're also going to take a picture that might be posted to Facebook. So just be aware of that as well.
Right. And a couple of more housekeeping. If anybody isn't sharing their video and wants to, just go in your own little box. There's like 3 little dots. If you hover over that, there should be a drop down to share your video screen, not your screen, but so that we can see you all. So if anyone's having trouble with that, that should take care of it. If you hover over the right-hand side upper portion of your name, there should be 3 little dots, and then you'll get your video going so we can see you. Okay. So I guess maybe Henry, as you said, Jerry and I can start off and talk a little bit about legacy work during this really, really difficult time with COVID-19. Obviously, it's really hard now for all of us in the doula world to do our work. We can't be admitted into almost any hospital unless we work there. So most of the volunteers are not allowed in, from what I know, and at least in our area. We're in the New York, New Jersey area. we're pretty much barred from going in as a volunteer anywhere. Family, as you know, very rarely can even also get in. So what can we do? I know one family that I worked with in terms of legacy work and really trying to get through to the person who was in the hospital. It was their mother and a grandmother that was in the hospital. And what they did was the children all took videos, the grandchildren all took videos of themselves telling stories about grandma and memories about grandma. And then they put it all together and they had it on their phone. And what they did was, when the nurse went in at one point, they asked her to please share this with grandma so she could see all the stories that her grandchildren were telling about her and how much they loved her. And that is a keepsake that they will have forever. She did die eventually, but that was something that they did share with her and that she could partake in. And, you know, she wasn't on a ventilator at that point. And so she was, you know, laughing and crying, and everyone was saying how much they loved each other. And so that was one legacy project really that they could all do together, was sharing that video. So I'll start that off. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in, or Jerry, if you want to jump in. Maybe Jerry, we talked about the baby monitors. Jerry, I don't know if you want to touch on that at all. It's not so much a legacy project, but.
I do think that part of our work focus may be with the families more at this time, more than with the actual dying person. And I think that a really good idea could be, after the person has died or as they're dying, is to write a letter to them and say all of the things that you would like to be able to be saying to them. Just that process of reaching into your heart and finding the words and putting them out on paper. Just that process alone, I think, helps the person to process what they're feeling and to kind of sum up that that there's this disconnect and they're not able to share those things. Almost like if I were sitting next to you, this is what I would say. And I think that that could be a powerful way to help our families of people who are dying, because we're really separate, and this is not our usual way of doing things. So it's one idea I had. Jenny, you want to talk about the baby monitors, or?
So I'll just touch on it briefly. I feel like most of you probably have heard this and know this already between our newsletter and our last talk. So we were told that some hospitals across the country started using baby monitors, two-way video baby monitors, to engage the patient in the room who are so isolated, so alone, so terrified. And as you know, the nurses and the doctors can go in and out, but they have their hands full. They're so busy. Putting on PPE for them, as you know, is a big event. It's a lot of work. And so one of the ideas that somebody brilliant came up with, the first one, I don't know who it was to have two-way baby monitors with a video, so that one part of it could be, the speaking part was in the room with the patient, and the actual video was outside the room. And that way, they could talk to the chaplains and the social workers who were making rounds and didn't necessarily have to don the PPE and put it on and take it off. And that would engage the patient in the room, talking to them, you know, soothing them, maybe playing some music, just really to help them out. And so that's something that we at INELDA got involved in, and we raised money. And for a lot of our local hospitals, we donated, I think we got up to 127 baby monitors to all different hospitals, and they were so thankful. So just an idea out there for all of you. You can do that on your own. We're done raising money. We finished our little project here in New Jersey and New York, but it's a very simple thing to do. You know, everyone says, how can I help? What can I do? as doulas, we can't necessarily get in. So that was just one little thing. But I'm wondering if people don't have a hand raising ability, if anyone could just raise your hand, even if you don't have anything to say, that way we can see. So do you not, it looks like for some reason you're not having that ability. Okay. Oh, David, you did. Oh, good. Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah. So,
Great.
So I just want to jump in here, and
Yeah.
I want to say that I see some of you have hands raised, and I will get to you momentarily. But I just want to say that there's a lot of ways of working with legacy, and legacy is one of those tools that we can use at any point in our work with a client and family. And in fact, I know that many cases we end up working with family much more than we end up working with the person who's dying around legacy. And so we still have that opportunity fairly easily through virtual means to work with family members, get them engaged in doing legacy work around the life of their loved one and its impact on them and its meaning to them. So I think this is one of those tools that we can really still use very actively at this time. The other thing I want to just remind us that in this time, we're all struggling on some level. This is not an easy thing for us all to go through. And one of the things I want us to be able to share and talk about tonight is how we're managing this time for ourselves. And that may be a model for how we can offer support to the people we work with or hope to work with virtually. So I do want us to have that opportunity tonight as well. In the meantime, I know there are a couple of people who raised their hands, so I'm just going to go with Amy. Amy Gale, if you would unmute yourself.
I was just checking the feature to make sure I could raise my hand. Here, I'm
Well,
happy to be
good
here.
job.
Thank you for having me. So I'll let the next person go.
All right. Gina, I saw you had your hand up briefly. Were you also just testing it?
I was just testing.
All right. All right, thanks. And David, I assume you were doing the same. So if anybody would like to speak at the moment, we can open it up and welcome. So Melissa, you've raised your hand. Can you unmute yourself? I'll unmute you. There you go. Melissa? Melissa Burridge?
I think she stepped away for a minute.
Okay.
I could speak.
All right. Who's that? Shanti. Hi, Shanti.
I'm
Go
here.
ahead.
Here in Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah.
That's a virtual background, by the way. It's not quite that magical here as far as the color. But so right now I don't have any actual doula clients. I'm no longer working in the hospital where I was. So, but I have 3 hospice people that I call. And I found, the telephone, the good old fashioned telephone is just a great, great tool because you can just sit and chat. And if they don't want to talk, you can call back later. And so I really stepped up in the past couple of stepped up my phone calling and we just are getting to know each other. Some of them I've never met in person. One of them I met in person a couple of months ago for the first time. And it's, we're just talking about whatever. Sometimes they do talk about their cancer therapies and their hopes for the future and stuff like, well, but if it doesn't work out, I've got my papers together and, or it's just different things, it's just like being friends. And I really enjoy that. So, like I said, while I don't have any actual doula clients, that's okay. I try to be of service where it's needed.
Yeah. Well, I think that's still important, Shanti. And we all need to do that. I think we need to reach out to the people in our lives and the people who we know even third hand who might need some help or support. It's really important now because of the physical distancing not to be socially distancing and to really reach out and connect to the people in our lives and the people we're potentially working with. So that's great. Thank you.
Henry, I think Lori.
Yeah.
Lori, you had your hand raised.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I currently do have a doula client, and what I'm doing right now is basically we speak on the phone maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And what she is doing is reading, pretty much just telling me her story, her legacy story. She's in her 90s. And she's, so what she's mostly interested is leaving her story for her 2 sons and I guess future grandchildren. So what I'm doing is, she's asking me more to embellish more the history of her grandparents. So what I'm using is ancestry.com based on the information she's giving me. So I was able to provide her some information on, maybe occupations and towns where they got married, whatever I could find. And she's been really, really grateful for that. And on top of that, she's just from there, we're just expanding. Like, she just likes the embellishment piece of it because she has most of the information. So I find that to be a little helpful, and that seems to be, working well without being present. And how we exchange the information is, I type it for her and I send it to her through email, and then she reads it and edits it, and then we kind of go back and forth on it. So that's basically what I've been doing. As far as self-care, I've always believed that to have a morning routine would work. So for me, I always start out with prayer. I like to meditate. I like to take long walks. I have a dog, so it makes it easier. And pretty much from that point, it just helps me start the day to clear my thoughts and then just start fresh and just get to work.
I think that's really important that we start the day in a way that allows us to, not be as anxious. If we're turning on the news, the first thing as soon as we get out of bed, or even before we get out of bed, we just, turning on the TV and watching the news, it can start the day with the anxiety that then I think we carry that with us through the day. And I know one of the things that was discovered about depression is that if you start the day by doing something active and physical and just focusing in on that, it starts your day in a much better way. And then you don't experience the depression as much throughout the day. So I think that's a really important model for us and for us to convey to people we work with or people in our lives, that start the day with something positive, start the day with some activity. If you do meditation or prayer or any kind of spiritual work, it's really wonderful to start the day with that. I know that some of us at INELDA who do have practices have really rededicated ourselves to those practices so that we can start our days in a better, more centered kind of way. And I think that's critical. So great, Lori, thank you.
Welcome.
I don't see any other hand. Oh, yes, Esther.
Her hand is up. Yep.
Yeah, a real hand.
Yeah, a real hand. Thank you guys for pulling this call together. This is really great. So one of my favorite legacy projects for the elderly is to have grandchildren or children buy recordable books and read them to either the grandparents can read the story to the child, or now with people in quarantine, I'm wondering if the child couldn't read the story to the loved one that's in the hospital, and whether the clinicians in the hospital could take that book in and play it for the patient. I know I've purchased, 5 of those books and read stories to all of my grandchildren. And they just love them. I mean, one of them has worn one out because she just loves having me read a story to her at bedtime. So I like that idea. And then I also work in the hospital, so I haven't been there since March 1st. But I stayed connected to the clinicians that I work with. And I talked to the director of palliative care, just sent her a text and said, I'm available remotely to help support any cases that you have. And she said, depending on the surge that we get, and I'm in North Dallas, we may set up a COVID comfort care unit. And if we do, we hope we don't have to, but if we do, then we would definitely ask you for remote support for the families. And you're right, Jamie, when you say, or Jerry, when you say that, the support I think that's needed now, and you guys know this, is with the families, because, we hear the stories on TV. I mean, they're just devastated.
Yeah. Esther, we're also in the process. We're in talks, and I'll shout out to Kristen Sarnes that we are in talks with Hackensack right now, one of our local hospitals, to support the patients' families
Right.
through the social workers. So all of the local doulas here, we may be getting in touch with to support the families, and that will be, through the social workers at the hospitals that will get in touch with the loved ones of the person who is a patient.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And then something else I've done is I posted on Facebook, in my community. And I just introduced myself as an end-of-life doula and said that I'm available remotely to talk to families who are grieving or dealing with advanced illness or have loved ones in quarantine. And surprisingly enough, I've been getting a fair number of private messages with people that just want to chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got one from somebody who said, I have a mother who has Alzheimer's and I'm struggling. Can you offer some guidance around that? So we chatted back and forth about that. And then I, like others, have a morning routine. And I find if I am absolutely consistent every single day, I can avoid things like depression, even though it's an incredibly sad time. So, and it's meditation and it's spiritual reading and it's, yoga, and I take my dog for a walk. And if I manage to do those things and I eat healthy, then my day is pretty smooth. So I'll be quiet now. And
Well, thank you, Esther, for that. So, Amanda, would you unmute?
Sure. Well, first, Henry, you mentioned starting your day with a meditative practice, and that speaks to something that I've been really doing for myself as well as helping establish with the families that I work with. I work for a pediatric home hospice here in Denver, Colorado. So all of my clients are children and their families, but a lot of these skills are applicable to the broader community, to any age group. I'm helping families establish any sort of routine that breaks up their day. So with meditation or with starting with yoga moves or mindfulness practices, as well as something that's silly. I have a colleague of mine who's in New York City, and every night they do the howling and the cheering and clapping for healthcare workers. So she goes out on her patio with her cowbell and makes a huge ruckus, and that's been a great routine for her. Some of the legacy things that I've been doing with my patients that I work with are digital. So a lot of our families are using Zoom and FaceTime. And one thing I found that's really powerful is having the patients turn my face off and turn their face onto the bigger screen and just doing a self-portrait and drawing what they see and letting them know that they don't need to have any artistic skills or even supplies, just paper and a pencil, so that they can draw what they're seeing in their face and talking about that. That's been a really great thing that I've done with families, as well as doing an interview with whoever is in the home, or if we're able to connect them through some kind of technology, doing some kind of an interview that can be video recorded where I hide my face and it's only the family members or caregivers on the screen. And I just help prompt some of the questions to get an interview going and then record it and being able to email that to them for them to keep.
Oh, that's great. Also, Amanda, just keep in mind that guided visualization is a wonderful technique with
yeah.
children.
Mhm.
So that might be very helpful to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also wanted to mention that during this time, also ritual can become a part of a calming effect for ourselves as doulas, as we're working with people, that pausing to, really be mindful of what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. And I also think that if people are open to the idea of creating ritual within their own life, just like the 7 o'clock clapping that they're doing in New York City, it can be just as simple as something like that. On our last call, we brought up at 9 o'clock at night, having people go outside and lighting a candle, or inside if you prefer, lighting a candle and just pausing for a moment and contemplating the things that you're grateful for. And then to illuminate a candle to, in your spirit, share your light and our hope. And since we announced that on April 2nd during our opportunity to connect, we've been getting images of candles burning in the nighttime, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And I think it's really uniting. I even saw someone do a podcast about it, and they brought it up from Canada. So it was like, this is, another way to feel as though there's some normalcy and there is a process to the things that you're doing, and that you're also interconnected to others.
Yeah. I'm just going to, Gina's been waiting to say something. And after Gina speaks, I'm then going to introduce Diane Button, who will share with us some of the legacy work that she's been doing virtually. So Gina, why don't you unmute?
Thanks. I just wanted to speak to this idea of ritual and having a routine. I am currently not working. I am a graduate student and I was volunteering for hospice in the hospitals. So I don't have any current clients that I'm working with, but I am doing legacy work for my boyfriend's family. They lost his grandfather just before this whole thing hit. And I'm in the process of making a memory quilt for his family out of his grandfather's clothing. But I'm working with someone locally who is a local artisan, fabric artist, who is teaching me about that kind of legacy work, doing that kind of thing. So I'm taking this opportunity to kind of educate myself as far as using that as a tool. And I think it's really important just to acknowledge the fact that this kind of environment that we're in right now is something that most people who are still around have never experienced. So for as difficult of a time as it is, and for as challenging as it is, it's probably one of the only times in any of our lives where almost everybody that we know is going to have a universal experience. And even though each person's experience is unique, the fact that we are all kind of in this same storm and that we're all trying to navigate it the best we can, because it is an unknown for all of us, that gives me a lot of comfort when things get really scary, because it's like, this is new for everybody. This is hard for everybody.
Interestingly, and before I introduce Diane, I just heard today somebody speaking about anxiety, somebody who has a history of anxiety and was discovering that her anxiety has gone away because on some level, we're facing something that's so big that the kinds of things that made her anxious before no longer seem as important, and her anxiety has just disappeared. And she's now trying to maintain that and find ways to hold on to that. So when things become back to some level of normal, her anxiety won't return in the same way that it had before. I thought it was very interesting that somebody with anxiety, it's disappeared in the face of what for us might be causing anxiety. So I'm going to introduce Diane and then allow Diane to talk to us about the legacy work she's doing. Diane Button is an INELDA graduate, and she works with doulas north of the San Francisco area in the Marin area. And she has, she's part of a group called the Marin End of Life Doula Alliance. She's also a board member for NEDA, that's the National End of Life Doula Association, or Alliance rather. And she's published books and articles about legacy and finding meaning and purpose in life. And she has a lot of experience working with clients from a distance right now. So I'm just going to turn this over to Diane for her to share with us her thoughts about how to approach this.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Those are great ideas already. This is so important that we're all coming together to share, because I feel like we need each other. We really need to cross over and share these ideas. It's hard. So I'm feeling like with my clients right now, the biggest issue is about loneliness. I'm just feeling like that's what is causing the most distress among the people that I'm working with. And so I've been trying to shift my work and do things a little bit more differently so that I can be in touch with people more often, but also to create projects that they can do inside their house. Now, these might not be COVID-19 patients, but we still have lots of clients and people out in the world that have a terminal diagnosis or something else going on and not being visited by their families and such. So it's a really important time. I was in the middle of several life reviews when this all came about, and I shifted to the telephone. It's hard to do Zoom with a lot of people in their 90s and late 80s. So I've been working on the phone quite a bit. And I kind of realized early on that the life review isn't really a great thing to do on the telephone. I felt like I couldn't see people's faces, so I didn't want to leave people feeling like they had just uncovered something that might lead to regret, unfinished business, shame, any of that kind of stuff. I didn't want it to come up and have them sitting home alone. So I shifted everything I was doing over to legacy work. And I think that's worked out perfectly. I think it's a great thing to be doing with clients during this time. And also, if you can give them something to do in between sessions, that's super, super helpful, I think. And just have them look forward to your next meeting, but also keep busy in the meantime. So unless a client asks, something comes up for them that they really want to talk about some of the harder things, I try to keep it light right now. And that's kind of been my motto, just keep it light. Also, when I'm doing legacy work with clients, I'm trying to empower them more, just because I feel like one lady that I know is in a home right now, and she doesn't get to go to the place where they eat, the dining room. She has to get a meal delivered. She's not getting to make any choices in her life. So I sort of realize that the more that we can empower our clients to make a decision, the better they're going to feel. And so even if I'm doing a legacy project and I'm asking a question or we're talking about something, I usually will ask them, do you want to talk about this, or do you want to talk about this? Or do you want to do this today, or do you want to do that? And I think giving people choices is just a little small thing that we can do these days to keep, empowering our clients. So a couple of the things that I've really liked a lot and have been working out on a regular basis, week to week, are the ones that I'm going to talk to you about today. Probably the one that I like the most is the heart letter. And it started with one of my clients, but I'm doing it with others as well now too. And it's basically a letter that, I'm going to say, my client is putting together for her memorial, for her family to read at her memorial. And she wanted to do this. We were in the middle of a life review. So we decided, let's shift over and let's start writing this letter. She can't write. She can't really hold a pen. She can't see very well, but she doesn't need to because we're on the phone doing it together. So I'll ask her a question and she'll answer me, and then I'll dictate it. and then it's the beginning of her letter. And then when I talk to her next, I will read back what I wrote. So I'll take her words and I'll form it into a letter.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Diane. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Anyway, so what I'll do is she'll dictate something to me, the answer to a question. It might be an easy question like, what are some of your favorite traditions in your family? Or it might be a more personal, deep question if she's in the mood for it. Like, if your whole family was gathered around you right now, what would you say to them? Because that's a great way to end a letter, you know, whatever they say there. So I always have a list of questions. Ask the question, she'll answer it. We'll talk about it for about a half an hour, and then I'll leave and write up what she said. Then the next session, I'll read what I wrote, and then I'll say, do you want to change anything, add anything? And it really gives her the opportunity to make it hers. And then we go on to the next question. And I think that's working really well, because an hour is a really long time for a client to talk. Most of my clients get really tired after about half an hour. So if I read to them and then we kind of have that back and forth, the heart letter seems to be really great. I'm almost done. I think tomorrow I'll finish the letter with this first client. It's about 3 pages long, and we've gotten to do a lot of like deep, meaningful work. And she just lost her best friend to COVID in the home where she's living last week. And so we had to process a bunch of grief, and that was great that I was able to have the relationship that I have with her to be there for that as well. I've also started checking in with everybody more than once a week. Normally I just set up an appointment once a week and they could do the work, and then I would see them the following week. But just because of the loneliness I'm feeling, I've been checking in usually twice a week for just a minute or two. Not a big deal, but just to check in and let them know I'm thinking about them. Another fun thing that I have going on with a client is we're calling it Christmas in April. And this client wants to leave a gift for everyone they love, their family members, a couple of friends. And she was going to order some stuff off Amazon and had this idea of doing it like that, but we were discussing it. And I said, what about items in your home? Do you have things in your house that, you know, that you're giving people when you die? And she said, yeah, I do. So she's doing this project now where she's going around her house and she's picking out some of her favorite things to give, like to her best friend and to her daughter. So she's picking out things in her house, and then she's dictating to me a little note that she wants to attach to each item. And the idea there is that when we all get to see each other again, I'll go there and she wants to take all the items and wrap them in beautiful paper and put the notes on them and leave them for her family and friends after she dies. So I think that's a pretty cool idea as well. And one of my clients told me the other day, I'm so worried that nobody's going to remember the sound of my voice. And she's like, I'm so alone, and I haven't seen anyone. I'm hardly talking to my family. And she was just feeling alone. And she likes to do read poetry, and she likes to do impersonations. So I grabbed my iPhone and I just had her record into my phone. And now she's recording more since then of things that she wants to say to her family at her memorial or after she's gone. So I think that the video, our phone, you know, video and dictation and stuff like that, so that you can record people's voices, is a really cool and helpful thing to do. Another client is writing birthday cards for people to open on the following birthday after she dies. So she's got about, I think, 16 people that she's identified that she wants to send a birthday card to the year after she dies. So I went out and got birthday cards, and then I said to her, okay, this one has a butterfly. Oh, that would be perfect for my aunt or whatever. So we picked a card for each person. And now part of our call is we'll open one or two of the cards, and she'll tell me who it's for, and she'll say what she wants to say. And then I'm not signing them, because I thought if I do get to see her, it would be great if she could sign her own name at the end of each card. But if I needed to, if I didn't get to see her again, I would be able to sign them. And I have everybody's name and birthday as well. And then one last idea. I have a client who is a man, and he's really just kind of going stir crazy inside of his house. He goes out a lot, normally walking, and he can't go out at all right now. And he has this incredible book collection. And so I said, you know, we start talking about what these books meant to him. And he started explaining how his life has changed because of these books. And so I said, well, wouldn't it be a great legacy for you to leave the story inside these books of what they meant to you and why you picked them and why are they featured on your shelf? And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. I think I'll do that. And I just checked in with him, and he has been going through his book collection and just writing a little something on the inside of each of the books about when he read it and what it meant to him and how it changed his life and who he thinks in his family would love to read it. So it's little things like that that I think you can keep your clients active in their homes and have something to look forward to next time you want to talk to them. You're going to talk to them. So that's been working out great. I sort of have this theory right now with end of life work that everybody's our client. I mean, who isn't pausing, reflecting, contemplating, you know, thinking about their mortality? I mean, this sort of stuff is coming up for all of us. Doesn't matter what age we are, doesn't matter if we're healthy or if we're ill. It doesn't matter. We're all in this together. And a lot of people are stuck at home looking for things to do. My mom, just the other day, she's like, oh, I need to get out of the house. And, you know, she was just kind of a little stir crazy. And I asked her, Mom, you know, you have so much art hanging on your walls. Where did all that art come from? And she's like, oh, well, you know, different trips. I said, why don't you go through your house and just write what every piece of art is, where you got it, when you got it, why you got it, and tell a little story for us so that, you know, when all that art is passed around to your family, we'll all know what that meant to you. So she's doing that. And I've been giving projects to my friends and aunts. And so I just think it's a really good opportunity for us now to think about legacy at a time when we're all here, we're all still, we're all pausing, we're all in this together. And I think it's a really, really good moment for us to reflect on what's important, what matters to us. And so I look at it as everybody could be doing a legacy project right now. So I love that somebody was saying that they posted on Facebook. That's a great idea, because if your friends and other people want to start thinking about leaving a legacy, they can do it now while we're here at home. And also those people can become clients later and get to know about end of life doulas and what we do and why we do it. So that's what I think. I think, you know, we should all reach out and help that way through legacy. It's just the perfect vehicle for what we're going through right now.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. I think all of those ideas, all of the things you're doing with clients and the ideas you just mentioned are perfect. And I think it's true that right now is a perfect opportunity for us all to be doing legacy work. When we do our trainings, we talk about the fact that we shouldn't be waiting until the end of our life to do our legacy work. And that now is always a good time to be writing letters to the people who matter to us and storing them up. My wife and I have written a number of letters to both of our sons, and we keep adding letters to that pile over time, so that at some point they're going to have a sort of a packet of letters that come from us to be able to go through, recording voices, taking a look at the objects that we collect or that are precious to us, I think is a wonderful thing to do. Looking at recipes, and you know, now is a good time to encourage the elders in our lives to write those recipes down, the ones that they have sort of in their heads that nobody else really knows how to do those recipes. Let's encourage the elders in our lives to write those recipes down, maybe even to video making a meal so that we see them doing it. And we have that to preserve both the visual of them as well as their voice and the recipe all at the same time. So there's a lot of things that I think we could be doing that would be particularly useful right now. Yeah, Jean, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Hitchhiking on what Diane said, I did my own legacy project since I've been out, and I've been encouraging people to do the same. I have 7 grandchildren between the ages of 5 and 11. And we're very into photographs, which I've always discovered most people are at the time of death and working toward things. Everybody wants old photographs. So I use Shutterfly, and I know there are a lot of other sites out there you can use, but I uploaded a lot of pictures, but I made a book for each of them. But in each of the books, my theme was really photos of the family, because they had a great grandmother who died 2 years ago, and nobody had pictures of her. And it was obvious the kids really wanted pictures, if there were them, with the person. So I've taken a lot of pictures of my grandchildren with me, and I've made a book for each of them. And with the text, it really is like a scrapbook for each of them. And I made a point of showing the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, so that when I'm gone, they will have a really great quality book with photographs, and it will help them remember all the times I shared with them. And then I added a note in each of the books where I made a point of really picking out the special things about each of them as individuals. Now they're young, so I'm somewhat anticipating what they're going to grow into. But I wrote out a sheet on the computer because it was a lot of words, making it very, very special for each of them, saying, this is what I see in you. This is the blessings and talents I believe you're going to have. So when they get the book, when I'm gone, actually I'm giving them the books in 2 weeks, but they will have that forever of all of our pictures. And it will include my parents, other cousins, etc. And I've been encouraging people my age to do the same thing. And it really has empowered them not to sit home and feel lonely, but to be putting a lot of effort. And we enjoy photos. We love going back through those memories of things we've shared. So I'm finding people I've suggested it to are having a great time because it's positive, but it has a really value for the future. The other thing I did was I joined a local Grief Share group, and Grief Share is a national program. And I joined a group mainly to learn to just increase and round out my own toolbox with my doula work. But it started 2 weeks before we were all shut in. And we've gotten really close. And since the group started, 2 people have lost family members to COVID. And because I'm already a member of the group, I've been able to develop relationships they wouldn't have had otherwise and encourage them through their grief. And as everybody's been saying, the loneliness is just really making people hurt the most. So it was another opportunity to reach out to people I didn't even know, but I knew were hurting. And now we have that relationship, and it's nationwide. So any of you could look for even a group of that nature and join, not necessarily as the one who's major grieving, but who can really help the others.
Great. Those were wonderful suggestions, and it sounds like you're doing some incredible stuff with people in your life. And you just made me think that another thing we can do is working with children. We can have them talk about their legacies. And I know that might seem odd when you're talking about children who could be, 6, 7, 8 years old, but talking about the things they think they will do in life, kind of like making one of those time capsules, but writing down what they think they may be doing in life, how they want to change the world, what they want to do when they get older, and then preserve that and check in a few years and see how that matches with what they think at that point. And that's legacy work too.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I've already told my grandchildren I will be doing an art gallery show of all the artwork they're doing. So many kids are doing work at home and they're producing a whole lot of artwork. So I already sent them out formal invitations to come to their own art show when this is all done, and mentioned it to a retired art teacher. I live now near Albuquerque, and we may look to do a citywide art show of that nature. And my grandkids are saying, when are we going to do the gallery? They're building up all this work, and the adults are getting excited about it too, because again, it's putting a different twist on the fact that we're all staying at home, it's like, okay, what can we produce during this stay at home time that's going to bring enjoyment and pleasure to other people?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Terrific ideas.
A few years ago, I took all of our old home videos that were just stacked up in different format. There was, you know, the little tiny tapes, the big tapes, and I sent them to a company and had them all put up digital on the cloud, basically. And no one said anything to me about it. I paid for that. It was a kind of a big lift, and I maintain it every month. I have a little subscription. And now all of a sudden with this going on, I started getting text messages. What's the password? How are those things still up there? And the next thing I knew, we were, you know, texting and talking, and we were watching the same videos. I was saying, like, go to family tape number 7. You know, this is where you asked Jake to marry you. And you know, it's like, you know, all these different things. I was really, really surprised. I think it was just, there's that awareness of impermanence, and now this time to kind of recognize that some of the people that we love and have been in part of our lives for as long as we know, that it may change. And I think that it just was all the right ingredients for us to be finally watching these movies that I've had for, you know, 35 years sitting there.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. Great.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who's been doing something along these lines, either with clients or with family, and wants to share some of what you're doing? So let me ask, how many of you are actually working with clients at this point virtually? You can raise your hand, and I have a view where I can see a lot of you. So I see a few of you. Why don't you talk about how you're doing that work with clients virtually now? Because that's something that we want to encourage, is for people to be working virtually as much as possible. And how did you put the word out? Were these clients that you were working with before we started isolating, or are these clients that you acquired even in this time? And how did you acquire those clients you're working with?
I could go, I guess, Henry.
Sure.
I have one of each. One that came into our came to us since this shelter in place has started, and so with them we've just been doing Zoom meetings. Myself and another doula, you know, as a team, are working with them. It's a husband and wife team. Not terminally ill, just want to do a lot of death planning, have heard about the doula process, and just want to learn about it and jump in and do lots of death planning. And they live in 2 different cities, and so they're trying to make arrangements for possible death in either one. And the other one is a client that came to me from a hospice. And initially his caregiver, who was his ex-wife, really wanted to work with a doula because she was afraid to be there alone with him at end of life. She brought him home from a skilled nursing facility near death, and we're 3 or 4 months later, and he's thrived at home, has taken care of her. He's been more reluctant to do a lot of death planning with me, but we talk about music, and we talk about his life and their life and how they came to be back together, you know, through this. And since I've been working with them, he's asked her to marry him, and they got married in their home a couple of months ago. So even though he's kind of an old psychedelic hippie guy, and he doesn't really want to do a lot of kind of formal planning and talking, he sort of listens and takes things in, and I feel like he is making plans, kind of in his own way. And now since this, you know, what I call the COVID at my house, I've dropped some food and hand sanitizer and things off to them at their home, and sort of spoken to him and visited from the porch. And then the last couple of weeks, we've decided we're not going to really do any, I'm not going to go by the house to visit anymore. And I call and talk to each of them, usually separately on the phone, the caregiver and the patient. And he sends me music videos. He sold his car since he can't drive anymore, and bought a synthesizer, and is trying to kind of go back to making music. And so he'll send me, not so much, before this happened, he gave me some of his original music. Now he sends me videos of stuff that he's listening to.
That's great. Great. And how did you get to that client? This is somebody that you work with since the time of COVID.
I'm one of the volunteer doulas at Hospice Slow County in Central Coast.
Right.
And he came to us from a medical hospice that we tandemly work with sometimes. So, and I think it was initiated maybe by another in-home volunteer with them that knew about our program and thought that, and had talked to the caregiver. I think it was their in-home volunteer with that hospice and the caregiver that initially kind of wanted to have a doula come in.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Is there anybody else who wants to talk about how you've either acquired clients or how you're working with clients right now?
I'll share.
Okay, great.
So interestingly, one person who I started working with after COVID started is somewhat my high school English teacher. And the reason we connected was legacy work I did a couple of years ago, where I wrote letters to people who changed my life, who I might not have told them I changed my life. So even though that connection with those letters happened, it was 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't until after this started that she got in touch with me and said, I think I'd like to do some end of life work. And we're working virtually because—
Sorry, Julie, you're breaking up. I don't know what.
Ah. Is that better?
A little bit.
Interesting. I haven't had a problem with audio before.
Henry, I can hear her perfectly.
Oh. Well, when you went under the desk, I heard you fine.
Well, what I was going to do was actually. Right.
I'm just going to switch my mic.
Oh, that's better. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. She's in California and I'm in Wisconsin. So I actually, it's a virtual client for me. I would have been anyway. So that's interesting about this time. And the other person is here in Madison, Wisconsin with me, and I was working with her before this started, and then we decided to keep going via Zoom. It's an interesting one because she has dementia, and so she was already describing her life as getting smaller and evaporating, and herself as disappearing. And she shares much more so. That feels much more so now that her world really has gotten smaller. Yeah, that's a particular interesting one. I will say her birthday is tomorrow, and I dropped off eucalyptus oil to her outside her house because she had talked about how eucalyptus, the smell of eucalyptus brings back the memory of being in the redwoods in California. And so just wanting to give her some other senses to connect her with memories. And then maybe the one other thing I'll share is I did host a virtual vigil. And the reason we did it is because the person is in hospice and she had a whole plan, a circle of people to care for her that would not be able to care for her in person. And everyone was grieving that. And so we did come together and meet, and we weren't sure she would be able to meet with us. We were really hosting it for the loved ones who couldn't be with her. But it turns out she was able to meet with us. And it was a really moving, beautiful experience for everyone. And so I actually really encourage people to offer that and to play in that space, because everyone said it made a huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else working?
Henry?
Yes.
Judith McGill
Sadie?
has her hand up.
Judith.
Yeah.
Judith.
Oh,
Yep, she has her hand up.
Yeah, there are some people that have just reached out to me. Both of them have cancer, and I think COVID has been a catalyst for them to start thinking about how they're going to try to be living during their dying. And they both feel like they've got about a year, and friends that have called me to start the conversation are saying, but the doctors say there's 3 months left. So tomorrow is the first online call for one of them. The other called me because she wanted to know if she could knit her own shroud, and if Canadian law said anything about that. So that was the beginning entryway into a really wonderful conversation about doing some planning. But I wondered, I wanted to tell the story about 1,000 people in Canada, and maybe some of you, who joined on Tuesday night with Choir, a group of that I'm involved with in Toronto. And they put it out to the world that they wanted to sing to Nova Scotia to help them with the grief that they're experiencing so intensely from the gunman that killed 22 people and then was killed. So 23 people died in a period of almost 9 hours only. 12, you know, people are unsure about the time, but it was a devastating, horrific, and still is a very raw. And it was so beautiful because we got together maybe 1,000 people from across Canada, and the streaming messages of love and blessings, and we're with you, we're behind you, we're there for you, and we love you. And the Nova Scotia people saying, I'm crying, thank you. And just the flow, the energetic flow of heart condolences and a real sense of we have your back. And tomorrow night, Friday night, is probably another national online service, because nobody can take over, these small towns would take over their arenas. They're not allowed to gather. And there's so many open, gaping questions about why? And right from the beginning, our Prime Minister said, we don't want to know his name. We're not going to revel in who he is or give him any. And for the most part, that's happened. And so this beautiful sense of holding the destiny and the people that died, and all of our media is about telling their stories. And so tomorrow night, I heard a little bit about what they intend to do. We have some Canadian singers, and especially out east. And so we sang Hallelujah, 1,000 people. We sang it, and then after all the names of the people and their key identities, a father, you know, a firefighter, or whatever it was they were. And yeah, I invited so many people to go, and they called me after and said, oh my God, that helps me with my grief about in this pandemic, seeing a local community, a regional, a provincial community hurt so bad. So I think people need it right now, that they come together even through this virtual means. Thanks.
yeah. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I took off my mic and my earphones because I think it was breaking up for some reason through that. So, but thank you. That was a lovely story. Sadie, I know you had raised your hand, physical hand. Do you want to speak? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Sadie?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And real quick, I just want to say hello to Pia. I recognize you from the class. Hello. Hi. One of the things I wanted to say, and this didn't have so much to do with legacy, but I did want to hear about legacy. So thank you for this. But one of the things that I've been working on with the couple of people that I am working with right now is guided visualization. It's something that I wanted to get more skilled at. And I'm finding too that it's helpful for people that are stuck in a room or, you know, inside, to be able to imagine being out in nature and in their special places. And it's helping me to become more skilled at it too. So I've appreciated this time for that.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think one of the things, although we didn't intend this whole evening to be about legacy, but we've been talking a lot about that. But I think another thing that we can do is ask people about how can we help them to think through ways of impacting the quality of their life right now, given the circumstances, given the fact that people are isolated, they may be staying at home mostly. Where are their struggles in terms of the quality of life in this time, and how might we help them to think through what they could do to improve or change that quality of life? Some of what we're talking about with legacy certainly touches on that, but guided imagery touches on that, the use of music that we've been hearing a little bit about. So there are different ways that we might help people to think through quality of life and how we can help them to think through ways of adjusting that. Yes, Anna, you want to say something? Sure, unmute yourself.
I do, yep, just did. Hi,
Thanks.
Thank you so much. All of this has been so helpful and so inspiring and encouraging. I am just going to post on the chat the link to Tara Brock, as she has created something called Pandemic Care Resources, which are meditations and talks that she's created to help people feel less isolated during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And every Wednesday night, she's also doing, she's streaming her live talks and meditation, you know, virtually for everyone to participate in. But last night's in particular was about loneliness, and I think would be very helpful for all of us and for all of us to share with our networks. I think it was, I know it definitely moved me, and I think considering that we are all isolated at this moment, it would be very supportive.
Yeah, great. You know, another thing that I know Tara Brock has is what she calls sheltering in love.
Well, that's what this is, the continuation of that. She's like, I'm gonna, who knows how many there'll be, but for now, that's what she's calling them, sheltering in love. So this was the 5th talk in that series, but it was on loneliness.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Anybody else looking to share, say anything? We can go anywhere we want from here. We don't have to keep this just on legacy. If you want to talk about how you're managing, how you're making it through at this point, we're open to that as well. So I'll share something. We're starting to talk to some people and connected also to Reimagine about working on memorials and finding ways to help people through virtual memorials. And that certainly falls directly within the frame of the work that we do as doulas. And it's something we can bring to our families, our circle of friends. If there's anybody who has died in our world, even if it has nothing to do with COVID, even if it's not a client, I think one of the things that we can help people with is creating virtual memorial services. And so I think we're going to be doing some work along those lines with a group of people who are connected to Reimagine. I assume most of you know Reimagine, which is this event that goes on for weeks, or in San Francisco and in New York, where they do conversations and rituals and music and art, all connected to end of life. They're typically citywide events, and they're doing that virtually now because they can't do it, obviously, in the cities where they have done it in the past. And so that's another thing that I think will be coming along. And it's also something for you to be thinking about in terms of helping people in your world, in your life, with virtual memorials. And I'm finding Zoom a fantastic platform for connecting and working with people. I know that there's something different about working in a flat two-dimensional world, but nonetheless, I think there's a certain amount of intimacy that you can really develop through Zoom. And in fact, we get so close through Zoom that in some ways we're closer than we can be physically. And I think that makes it very intimate working with Zoom. And I encourage you to try working with Zoom if you can, if you have clients who, or family members or friends who can work with Zoom, who aren't tech phobic. It's a great platform.
So Henry, two things on that. Amy Cunningham is going to be on our next webinar in May, talking about funerals and what's going on in this environment, and that's going to be at some point in May. And she has so much to share, as she always does. So we look forward to that. There'll be a lot to learn, I think, from Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say along those lines, from what you said, I was probably like many of us, I was in a virtual Zoom wake, actually. And it really worked. They had the camera on the coffin, the person who had died, and everyone was socially distancing in that room. There were only, I think, 5 people from the family allowed in that room, but they did it through Zoom, and they opened it up like this, and everyone kind of told a story about her and what her life meant to them. There were eulogies, and it really was beautiful. Mm-hmm. So there are ways, I guess we have no choice to work around it. But as you said, Zoom was an amazing tool, and they made it work.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. And one of the things I found is that there was so much more sharing through Zoom than there would be at a live memorial. You know, you have 2 or 3 people who give a eulogy or give a speech, and everybody else is just silent. And with Zoom, there was so much more sharing. I was really amazed at that. And I think that speaks to how wonderful this is as a platform, that we have that, and we have that capability.
And if it's at a funeral home, the funeral homes know exactly how to set it up. They instruct you, they know where to place the camera. They have it really all down in this crazy environment that we're in. So they really make it very easy. They take that pressure off.
Yeah. Diane, did you want to say something? So unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, just following off on that, I was speaking to a woman last week who had, her husband had died from COVID and had a funeral, virtual funeral memorial. And she said that was the best thing that happened to her since her husband died. That she said if she was in her hometown, she would have maybe had 15 people there, and there were almost 200 people there. So I think that's, you know, part of the silver lining that we're getting out of these times that we're going through right now, that some of this is probably going to be here to stay. So I think that the more we learn to adjust and whatnot, so that we can just kind of keep some of this going. I mean, why not have a funeral while there's also Zoom going on at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. Shanti, Judith, Shanti had raised her hand. So I'm going to have Shanti, and then I'll come back to you. So
Great,
Shanti.
yeah. Okay, yeah, because the technology side is very interesting. And even before all this, I was kind of wanting to find out more about what programs to use that are easy to use to do a nice memorial or a presentation. I've done things with PowerPoint, but I never figured out how to put music to it. I had to do the music separately. I don't know how to put little video clips. And so I wondered if maybe even on our website, we could have a resource or somehow share resources on what are the best, technology things to do. And our Gainesville doulas met on Zoom and we recorded our meeting, but I still don't know how to bring that recording and put it out because I don't know. So I just wondered what programs people use. And I know we don't have a lot of time right now, but.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea, for us to try and put together some material so people have some ideas and know some of the approaches to working in this environment. So thank you for that. Judith, you want to unmute?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's anyone among us, or if you've had any experience with it. Community Death Care Canada has used Zoom for 7 years, but we've used it in a fairly didactic, simplistic way. So right now I have to move my courses onto, I'm moving courses onto online. And I took a course today, one being, how to have breakout rooms and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And of course, taking all these courses that are free right now, there's a lot of breakout rooms, so I'm going to use that. But my film club started doing Zoom in the middle of this. And our last meeting in May, she's asked me to do a mingle party. I said, is that a Zoom watch party? Because I don't know. She sent me a link. But I think if we could combine the mingle party and Zoom, so that when people arrive at the funeral, they could choose someone to go have a private conversation with and then move over. That's what I understand these mingle Zoom parties are about. And that fusion of those two things, I think, would be really healthy, but also creative way to have space before the ceremony begins. Does anyone know if you can do those two together? Are they separate and apart?
I don't know. We at INELDA are learning as fast as we can about Zoom, but that's not something that I've encountered yet. I don't know if anybody else, if anybody here has any.
Melissa is raising her hand.
Okay, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. I was in a birthday Zoom recently, and I discovered that through that, someone says there are meeting rooms, so you can have a main, like we're doing here, and somewhere in the features of the setup, whoever's establishing that can create a different room or different rooms, so people can go and pair off into those rooms and then come back. So there is that feature. And then there's also a network called Crowdcasting. And on Crowdcasting, that's capable. I was watching something on Terrence McKenna. It was a memorial for his anniversary of his passing. And they had lectures on, and they would have the lecture go on, and then in between breaks have these side rooms, and then people could join those side rooms. So that's Zoom and Crowdcasting would be something to look in for that kind of work.
Yeah.
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 We have breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms.
Yeah,
right?
we
breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
but
we
I hadn't
know
heard
about
the
those.
expression mingles, so I don't know if that's different.
Yeah.
So Henry, I've got the link for my film club, and I'll send it to somebody, maybe you, Jerry, and you can, I have to learn that before our next film club, but I just like the idea of both those things so that the space and time are separated together and singularly.
Yeah. I think there's a lot out there that, that's available that for different purposes. I just heard yesterday about Slack groups, and that seems to be a very interesting and intriguing platform as well. So we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity. If you haven't spoken, if there's something that's been on your mind, if there's a question you'd like to ask, a comment you would like to make, any kind of sharing for the rest of the time we have would be wonderful. So I'm just going to open it up and see if anybody is interested. You can raise your hand, your little blue hand or your little physical hand, and yeah, go ahead, Holly. But unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. I am like so grateful that I found out about this Zoom meeting tonight, because I just recently finished an end of life online training. It was through University of Vermont. And this has been so helpful. The only thing that really we got into in any real detail with was working with the Destiny Project. Dignity
Therapy, right?
Dignity therapy, yeah. And then we had a project where we went and we found a volunteer and interviewed them. So I just want to thank everybody tonight. I've been thinking about becoming a member of INELDA, and I'm so impressed with all the work that you all are up to, and the exciting and creative ideas that you have, how you're finding ways to connect with your clients during this pandemic. It's really exciting, and I have a bunch of student buddies that I will share this with, and I've written down some of your names specifically, so don't be surprised if I reach out to you on Facebook or something. But yeah, this just sounds like something I really would love to be a part of.
Well, I'm so glad you came. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to share? David, you made it back. Well, I think then Janie and Jerry and I will perhaps finish off by just offering a few words. If you would like, Jerry or Janie, either of you, would you like to say something?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for spending your, Thursday night with us. And I know it makes me feel so much more connected, and my heart is full knowing that the work that all of us all the work we're doing independently, that also there's a collective, impact of it, and that we also help one another. So thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I will echo that. And it's just so wonderful to see everybody's faces. I love that connection. We're all probably sitting in our houses alone most of the day. So it's great to connect with all of you via Zoom. And, we are here for you. We're all here for you. So let's all help each other. We're, like Jerry said, we're all in this together. Reach out to any one of us. You know where to find us. We're at inelda.org, info@inelda.org, or any of our names at inelda.org. And we would love to hear from you. Anything going on, any ideas, anything you want us to, try to bring out to the rest of the world if we can. We would love to hear it. So it's great seeing everybody tonight.
Yeah, and I'll just offer my thanks as well, and deep appreciation for everybody coming and spending this time together. And it's wonderful to see some of the faces of people that I've been at trainings that I've been at as well, and haven't seen your face in quite a while, and that's very lovely. And I just love the coming together and offering ideas and sharing. I think that's so important right now, and we don't have opportunities, or we haven't had opportunities like this earlier. So this is wonderful. We've been pushed into this kind of sharing and utilizing this platform. And I just want to offer everybody that you stay safe and you stay well, you and everybody in your lives. And I hope we all get through this crazy time together, and that we learn a lot about perspective and our lives and our legacies through this time. So thank you so much. And I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night. Have a wonderful night.
Night.
Bye.